them seriously.
Well, they're also terrorists. I mean, let's just be crystal clear. This is an act of terrorism that we saw at the weekend, the worst since 9/11, one of the worst terror attacks in modern history. And yet you have mainstream media, the BBC in Britain, refusing to describe Hamas as terrorists. They call them militants. Even John Simpson, one of their senior foreign correspondents and editors, said it's not a journalist's role to call groups like Hamas terrorists. He says calling someone a terrorist means you're taking sides and ceasing to treat the situation with due impartiality. The BBC's job is to place the facts before its audience and let them decide what they think honestly and without ranting. That's why in Britain and throughout the world, nearly 500 million watch, listen to and read us. There's always someone who'd like us to rant. Sorry, it's not what we do, but I don't think it's about ranting to describe acts of terror as being committed by terrorists. And the New York Times apparently today actually changed the wording of a story they put online and changed the word Hamas terrorists to Hamas gunmen, as if they're almost terrified, literally, I mean, how ironic, of using the word terrorist. But what is it about mainstream media, two huge examples of it, New York Times and the BBC, that they won't just call this what it is?
I think that a lot of these groups are afraid of the political implications of just calling a terrorist a terrorist. I mean, when you acknowledge that the government of the Gaza Strip is in fact a terrorist government, that has some pretty large-scale implications for a lot of the political agendas at play. Because, of course, the great sort of dream of the West since at least the Oslo Accords has been that territorial concessions and that economic concessions would solve this problem. And when it turns out that an entire area is governed by a government that is in fact a terrorist government, is an actual terrorist group, then that has some pretty significant implications moving forward for the prospects in the region. And it also suggests that Israel has a moral duty, which it absolutely does, to protect its own citizenry by eviscerating that terrorist group from the planet. And the word terrorist has a definition. And that definition, by any stretch of the imagination, is fulfilled by what Hamas is. I mean, the BBC's explanation is so bizarre. It's almost like suggesting that if you found a man who had murdered his wife in an apartment and you reported on that, you didn't call it murder. You just said that someone was killed. A person was killed, and the person was convicted of murder, and you still said they're not a murder. We don't make judgments over here and use language like the word murderer because that would carry some moral implication. Well, yes, it turns out that murdering entire families, slaughtering entire families, burning them. I mean, some of the stuff that I've been tweeting out, which is stuff I'm getting again directly from first responders on the ground. I mean, just a few moments ago, I tweeted, I wish I didn't have to tweet out these photos, but I think people need to understand the consequences of failing to see evil for what it is. It was a photo of a group of people in a kibbutz called Kibbutz Be'eri, which is again near the border where 100 bodies were found, and they were attempting to simply escape, and Hamas stopped the car and burned these people alive. I mean, I don't know how you don't call that. What other goal could you have but to obscure the morality of the situation if you refuse to call things what they are? It boggles the mind. It truly does.